Hey family, this is Jay Ivory with Rivers and Wastelands, and I'm driving, but I'm being safe, I promise you. So I'm not holding my phone. I'm actually going to visit my grandmother. She is 98. Oh, that's Duchess. Just ignore her. She's 98. She'll be 99 in December, and I'm on my way to visit her. I'm actually picking up my son from my mother, who's visiting her mother, and I asked her if she could stay there so that I could go visit my grandmother. I haven't seen her in about 3 years because of the pandemic. I mean, face to face, I haven't seen her, so I'm on my way. But I have been praying to God about the next part of the testimony He wanted me to share, and I wasn't hearing anything for a while. So as I told you guys before, I try not to do anything without a yes from God or from a direction from God. So it was a couple of days, a week and a half or so, but we're here. So first of all, hello, and please know that I'm so grateful that you guys are here and journeying with me. So if I'm not looking directly at you, it's because I'm driving, and I am driving safely, so I do not want you to be concerned. But though I was having a conversation with my homegirl not even a week ago, couldn't have been a couple days ago, and she said something that then I've heard repeated the last couple of days, and so I believe that this is what God wants to talk about, and that is, it's settled. It's settled. Let me go back though. So I talk about this journey, and I talk about this path that I've been on, that God has allowed me to reset myself, right? But the thing that God did for me, and this is my journey, and that is, He gave me a promise, and it was one that my heart has desired for all of my life. And so the promise, I believe, kind of kicked me into gear for the reset of my life, right? And this isn't a video about that promise yet. I don't feel God saying that that's what this is about. But what He wants me to talk about is the fact that He gave me that promise in isolation. He gave me that promise just to me. There wasn't a bunch of people around. It wasn't like somebody said, come to an altar and say anything. He gave it to me. And I don't know if I've mentioned it in these videos, but my natural earthly biological father is stands as God for me often. What I mean by that is, when I struggle to hear God, God sends my father, because my father is such a sound voice for me. And so something had happened. Again, this is not that video, but something had happened that broke my heart. And as I'm crying about it, the next morning, my father calls me, and my father is he's not really the pick up the phone and just be like, hey, what's up? Like, my father always has a purpose on the phone. I don't know if y'all dads are like that, but my father, like, our phone calls can have like 100 pieces of information in 30 seconds, because he just like, here's the information, good night, good luck, right? That's just how he is. And he called me this day and was just like, Jennifer, that's how he calls my name. And I said, because I'm thinking, as I see him calling, I'm like, oh, if I answer a certain type of way, he's going to know that something is wrong. And so I thought I did a really good job to be like, hey, Dad. And I heard him pause. It was a slight pause, and my father said, hey, I'm coming to visit you tomorrow. And I was panicked, because my daddy can read me, okay? And I did not want him to know that his only girl was heartbroken, because, you know, that just sets off a rampage, and I don't want that problem, you know? But I just try to play it cool, because I'm thinking I can get myself together by tomorrow. You know, I'm straight. And so he says that. So I called my homegirl, and I was like, God, like, no, I didn't say God. I said, I told my homegirl, I said, yo, my daddy is coming tomorrow. I'm not prepared, because I don't know how I'm going to cover up this heartache, right? Come on, Lord. And my friend says, maybe you're not supposed to. And I was like, nah, you don't know my daddy like I know my dad. Like, I don't want my dad to come, because I just didn't want him to read me, you know. But again, at this time, I was so heartbroken, and I knew that I heard God the night before in the middle of this thing, but I was just so hurt. I didn't want to address it. So I know that God sent my father the next day. And when my dad comes and he brings his wife, and it was odd because my son was younger, so he went outside and like played with my son and let me talk to my stepmom, and I was talking about the thing that I didn't want to talk about with her, and it was a much softer conversation, and we just talked, you know, like women, which was cool because I didn't know I needed that, but I did. You know, my mother is the same way, but this is my stepmom. And so anyway, I'm thinking, okay, good God, you sent my dad, but you know, my stepmother is the one who who worked this through with me, so I don't have to deal with, you know, my dad's dadness. You follow me if you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, my father then, I don't even know how we got there, but I was in my room and my dad comes in and he just sits in front of me, very like official. And like I said, I didn't think this video was even going this way, but he starts to tell me things specifically about what I had just experienced the night before. And one of the things that he said to me was, it's not over. And I don't think this thing is done, but you need a new, come on God, you need a new covenant with God, because you had gone this way. And man, he just started to, but my father and I are very close, but I don't discuss heart matters with my dad because I'm his only girl, and I'm still one of the people that's like, yeah, daddy, I don't want to talk about dudes with you. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, the way my father was talking was not like my dad. My father is a pastoral counselor too, so he was speaking more like that. And so, but he's also he used to be a pastor, so he's speaking from these two hats, and he's still my father. But as he was talking, and again, I think I've told you guys at the beginning of this journey, me and God want that tight, but it was me, not him. And it was just because I was hurt. Anyway, I could sense that this wasn't him. But what I said to God, as soon as my father said those words out of his mouth, I said, God, please don't do that to me. Please don't say that to me. Don't joke. Don't play like that. And that's a story in 1 Kings that I will tag in the thing about the woman when Elijah comes and says, you know, this time next year you'll be holding, you know, your son, I think he says. And she goes, don't play with me like that. That's exactly the feel. It was like, God, don't even joke. Don't even sit, like, let my father say the things that he's saying, because I don't want to get my hopes up. I didn't want to get my hopes up because I'm so used to heartache at this point that this is the norm. It's not what I want, but I'm so used to it. I don't even want you to be a hope dealer at this point. I don't even want you to tell me that this is not the end, right? I'm going somewhere. And so my father says that and he leaves. From that moment, it started the night before when God said, when I said to God, well, thank you for your protection. And again, that's a different video. And God, the next day, my father comes in and God tells me, I knew I could trust your heart. And from that point forward, my life has changed. And like I've talked to y'all about the 2 years. Now, this video is called It's Settled. Jennifer, that don't have nothing to do with what you just talked about. It does. Because from that point until about a month or two ago, with all the growth and with all the closeness with God and with all of the revelation that God gave me, I still struggled because the promise God gave me involves someone else. And what I struggled with was, in my earthly mind and with my knowledge of God, I did not know how to rectify, like how can I be assured that this thing, it will be, if it is dependent on someone else? How do I know that this thing is going to be what you said if it is contingent on someone else saying yes also? And so for 2 years, I was waiting for, mind you, God has given me revelation and confirmation over and over and over and over and over. But I still had not heard it from the person involved. I also have friends that are very connected to God. Very, like, I always joke, they sit on the right hand of the right hand, right? They are in tune with God. And I didn't realize that I was waiting for one of them to confirm or discredit what my father said. I was waiting for one of them to be like, yes, that's true. No, it's not. You're crazy. You're not crazy. Like I was waiting for someone else. Whole time, God is confirming it. And what God told me was, you still hold other people's word over mine. Not realizing it. And again, God wasn't, remember that Romans 8:1 says there is no condemnation. So God does not come at us like trying to like beat you in the head with stuff. But when he reveals something to you and you feel that conviction, it's just so you can turn around, right? And so he reveals to me that there were moments where there was silence from the person that the promise was attached to, right? There was also silence attached to some of my friends that I was close with, and he allowed me to think certain things about the way they thought so he could heal that part of my heart, but also so that I was left to only have the assurance of Christ. And when I got the assurance of Christ, there is a peace that comes, y'all. Because you're not waiting for a shoe to drop. You're not waiting for it to all go wrong, right? You're not waiting for someone to confirm what you've heard, because you just know. And it came with building my relationship in God, right? Building my knowledge of his character. It came with just being sure of who God is and that he's not a liar. Oh, yes, thank you, Duchess. It also came with the knowledge that God wants this thing for me. It's his promise, right? I talk about Psalm 37:4 all the time because we hear it wrong. It says, take delight in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. But it's not take delight in the Lord and he'll say, hear whatever you want. It's I will give it to you. So we are wanting the same thing. This is the desire that God has had for me. And there was a process to get there. And a part of that process, the point of this part of the testimony, is I had to have assurance in what God said without anybody else's cosign. I needed to know that what God told me is not wavered by what I see, what I hear, what I'm experiencing, my past. It's not wavered on if you believe it, if you believe it. If it looks like not what God said, then it's not finished yet. And it took me about 2 years to hold on to. I believed it, but you know the scripture that says, believe but help my unbelief, the guy and his son, and he's like, I believe you, but help my unbelief. It was like that because I really wanted to believe God, but I was still looking through a lens of hurt. I was still looking through a lens of disappointment. I was still looking through a lens of expecting it just not to go well for me. Whole time, I believe God for y'all without question. And God was like, so how come you doubt me for you, but you will stand flat foot for everybody else concerning the things that I've said? And I had to deal with that. I had to learn how to believe God for my stuff, that he loves me also. Like we're all his favorite. Like as we stand in front of him, I'm his favorite and you're his favorite. But we'll believe God for everybody else's stuff except for our own. And so when I say that it's settled, I don't know if God is saying prophetically, I get to tell you guys, oh, it's settled in your life. No, the testimony is it's settled, but it was already settled when he said it. But now I'm settled. Now I'm settled in it. My homegirl that I told you, okay, so I say homegirl a lot because there's a bunch of them, so I don't know. I mean, but this particular homegirl, God allowed me for a short season to believe that she had stopped believing with me, because I really believe that relationship is important as far as 2 and 3 and gathered and all of that stuff, right? This particular friend, I believe for a while just had stopped believing, and so I didn't converse with her about this particular thing, but not like in anger. It was just I needed to believe it, and I didn't want to hear I didn't want to hear negativity associated with what I believe. She's not negative, but I just didn't want to hear. And for a while there, I thought maybe I was like, oh God, I only want to hear what I want to hear. But that's not what it is either. It was the fact that I just needed to be assured within myself. And so when I stopped, we had a conversation recently, like I said, it was recently, where she was like, no, it's settled with me. But God didn't allow us to have that conversation until it was settled with me. And so what God also revealed was I wasn't even standing alone when I thought I was standing alone. When I was standing on this thing seemingly by myself, I wasn't. God still had my 2 and 3 with me, even though I didn't know that they were with me. Like I knew she stood with me, but I thought that she was like, hey God, yo, like help her see that this ain't what it is. Whole time that's not even what it was. And I didn't feel negative. I didn't have vitriol against her or nothing. It was just, I was like, God, I need to just know. I need to know. I need to be settled. And once I got there, then he allowed her to come back and be like, oh, nah, girl, I've been standing with you whole time. Whole time, it's settled with me. And the way she said it was like, same. Me too, you know? And so I'm not waiting on the people who are associated with the promise to say specific words or do specific things, because it's settled within me. Me and God got it. Like God told me, I believe it, like period. And I believe that goes along with the video, the testimony part about the uprooting of the rejection, because once I realized that like nobody's out to get me, like God is not out to get me. The only one out to get me is the enemy, and like he a loser, so I ain't worried about him. But there's no one out like trying to plot against me or root against me, and if they are, then you work for him, for the enemy, and I don't really rock with you like that, and that's okay. I'm protected against that. You know what I'm saying? It's settled within me. So my this part of the testimony is that there is a promise that I've been standing with God on, but now I just have this peace and I'm resting in it. I used to always hear the older people in my church say, rest in the promise of God. I didn't know what they was talking about. But now I do, because that worry, and the anxiety and the stress of trying to figure out, like put stuff together to see if it's going the way God said, that ain't even my job. Like trying to see, well, is that person doing this yet? Because then that would signal that this is happening. If that happens and that's too much. That's not my job. That's not my job. And what's wild is that that's how God made me in other areas of my life, which is an advantage in those parts of my life, to be able to piece things together and figure things out. That is a benefit in some areas, but that's not how faith works. Come on. That's not how faith works. God doesn't need us to be like to operate in logistics and be like, I need this to go, then this will happen. If that happens, then he don't need us to do that. We don't need to be statisticians and try to run the numbers. He don't need us to do that. He needs us to be settled. And once we are settled in what he said, that peace that he promises, man, when I say I'll be chilling, I just be like, well, even if it doesn't look exactly like it. And then what's so beautiful is the peace allows you to see that things are moving. Come on. The peace allows you to see that things are progressing. The anxiety and the stress made me feel like, because it wasn't at the end of a thing, that it wasn't moving. But when you're operating in peace, when you're truly resting in what God says, you can see with clarity, which also allows you to pray with clarity, because now I can pray it with exactly what I'm seeing. I can go, okay, well, if this is where we are, God, how you want me to address what I'm seeing? Because now I'm not seeing through the lens of anxiety and stress or disappointment or whatever. I'm seeing exactly what it is. And it's beautiful to watch the way God has woven these things together. So, like I said, my encouragement is it's settled. Again, if that speaks directly to you, then receive it that way. If it's just an encouragement to be like, go to God and be like, God, I need to settle this thing and stop trying to put it together for myself, then so be it. If it means something completely different, my encouragement is always to go to God and ask him what it means. Maybe it's a word that you need to pass to somebody else, to be like, hey, you're leaning on me to confirm what you want, what you need God to confirm. You're leaning on me. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, because again, God made us to be relational, but at some point he wants you to have assurance in him alone. Because if I was waiting on the words of a person, if I was waiting to stand in the prophet line and wait for somebody to say to me what God already told me, then I'm putting more weight on them than on God, and that's out of order. That whole thing about do not forget God is not just don't forget him. It's also don't forget that he is the one that's doing all of this. He doing all of this. I hope y'all receive this. I love you with the love of Christ. Talk to me. Love you.